Hi everyone, Mike and Jen here. We took a trip at the end of May up to Vermont and up into Montreal. So on day one, we flew into Burlington and we grabbed a rental car at the airport. We immediately drove to Montreal, which was about 2 hours away. So the first thing we did was headed just outside town to the Mount Royal overlook. And then in the same Mount Royal Park, we drove to St. Joseph's Oratory.
It was a really interesting place, very large. There might have been 8 or 9 levels to walk through. It was a little bit of a basilica and museum all in one. It had a carillon. We listened to the carillon play. That was really cool.
We saw the votive chapel, which was complete with a collection of walking canes from past pilgrimages to the site. We took in the amazing views from the top, like you said, about 8 floors. And then we headed to the gardens.
It was very park-like, very sort of botanical, so it was really nice and relaxing.
Yeah, pretty amazing place. So after a few hours sightseeing, we headed back downtown, and we had a really nice room.
The room was really very well located. It was right next to the Notre Basilica and right sort of in that old town area, so we could walk to all the places we wanted to see in that section of town.
So that evening, we ate at a place called Maggie Oaks, which was really nice. It wasn't really too pricey. Day 2, we headed out for a day's adventure around the highlights of Old Town Montreal.
So we started out at the City Hall, and City Hall was really interesting. They had exhibits on the first floor, and then you could walk up to the second floor, but they had an outside viewing area, and that was really cool. So we were up there taking pictures for maybe about 30 minutes. And then from there, we went to Notre Dame. We bought a 2-part ticket. One was an entrance fee, and then one was for a nighttime light and music extravaganza. So we got there as soon as it opened. We got some really great pictures without a lot of people in them, but I think the most amazing thing of all was that they were doing a music tour. There was an organist that played the giant pipe organ. It was amazing. It probably was the coolest thing we did in Montreal. Once we left Notre Dame Basilica, we went to a Latin place.
Yeah, it was called Sabrosa.
It was really good.
Yeah, and it was right next to where Maggie Oaks was.
It was next door to Maggie Oaks. And while we were there, it was raining, but we were sitting outside and we had a covered table. It was really nice.
Yeah, and it was a great view of the Jacques Cartier place, which was basically that whole area where those restaurants were. And then really that afternoon after lunch, we walked back south to the Montreal Museum of Archeology and History.
And that was interesting. So it was all about the founding of Montreal, and they built this museum on top of the ruins of original Montreal. So there was a lot of sewers and pillars and foundation work.
It was pretty wild to walk through their sewer.
But the very top floor, again, had a viewing area, so we went up there and we took some pictures. We watched a couple people bungee jump. That was pretty cool. And then from there, I think we headed back to the nighttime light and music extravaganza in Notre Dame.
Yeah, it was called Aura, A-U-R-A. They didn't allow you to take any photo or video in there, so we don't have any video of that. And then after the show, we went out for Greek food, of all places. Yeah, at a place called Tzatziki.
Yes.
Kind of spelled, as a play on words of tzatziki sauce, and had nice food there. And then really, once we were full of Greek food, and we walked around a little bit more because there was really still plenty of light out, even though it was almost 8 o'clock.
We did the river walk, and we walked down.
We went east to the old port.
They also had what I'm assuming was the Montreal Eye, one of the giant Ferris wheels down there by the water. And there was a Cirque du Soleil tent down there. We went to a place that did soft serve dipped cones, and they were fantastic.
Yeah, Mademoiselle Catherine's.
Oh yes, Mademoiselle Catherine.
And then on our final day in Montreal, we spent the morning touring the Montreal Botanical Garden.
And it was really, really cool. I'm very happy we did that. They had sort of Japanese gardens and Chinese gardens and a walk with trees that had plaques and labels so you could read all about the trees. I think one of the coolest pictures I took during this vacation, we were in the Chinese garden along with a bunch of Buddhist monks. So I got some really cool pictures of the monks in front of the Chinese style buildings. That was cool.
Yeah, again, just some incredible waterfalls and ponds. And then really we were ready to head out of Montreal. But first we needed to go for one of the Montreal food classics, poutine, which is really a local dish which in its traditional form is a high sodium gut bomb of French fries, brown gravy, and cheese curds.
But I had a really great club sandwich, and that offset the weird cheese curd thing.
Yeah. And then after lunch, it was time to head back to Vermont to start our sightseeing there. We went to a town called Stowe, which is normally kind of known for its winter skiing destinations. We did have some nice meals there. And our first night, we went to just a restaurant chain in the Northeast called American Flatbread, and it was really good. Really, after staying in all day the next day, we walked next door to a different place to eat, which was at Stowe Cider. And we had a great dinner there, highlighted by our
flight of ciders.
2 flights of ciders.
Well, yes, I had a flight and you had a flight.
And then finally the weather cleared up, and on Sunday we went on a fantastic tour of a really small local farm called Sage Farm Goat Dairy.
So we got to meet the girls, we got to see some babies, we got to see the store they had on site. They have a brand of cheese that they wrap in bark, and so we were watching them actually harvest the bark out of one of the trees that had fallen down. But at the end of the tour we got a cheese tasting, which was my favorite.
And we had 3 different types of cheeses, and those were tasty. And then Sunday afternoon we went about an hour away to our final stop, which is back in Burlington.
When we got to Burlington, we went immediately downtown and did the Church Street area.
We first walked through Battery Park, which was over there. And so then we did go, there's a library there, which was in a building from the early 1900s. And then that evening, we went back to a different American flatbread.
Again, set oven adjacent.
And so then the next day, we took a short road trip to Montpelier. We started the day at the Cold Hollow Cider Mill.
Oh, we watched them press cider. So we watched them basically take apples through the conveyor, they ground them up, and then they use what looks like a giant fire hose to fill trays, and they would put cheesecloth and they'd fill it again. So they had 16 layers of apples, and then they'd move that into a press, and they would push up, and you could just see the juice pouring off of these stacked grates. It was really cool. So we were there for maybe an hour, hour and a half. They had apple cider tasting. We, of course, bought apple cider donuts.
Yeah, and the press only runs, I think, Monday and Thursday, so we timed it well going there on a Monday. Full of apple goodness, we went not too far down the street to tour the Vermont State House, which is the Capitol building for the state. And I think we would definitely call this one a don't miss. It was really cool. So
it is not the original, because the original burned down, but the one that they built to replace the original. We did a self-guided tour. They had a thing where you basically scan QR codes and it would tell you about the area that you were in. We saw both sides of the House and the Senate in that building. The history and the artwork and everything in there, the architecture was really cool.
Yeah, what was really wild is they had really all the original furniture in the building, and it was all still in use, both in the House and Senate rooms. So that was really cool, seeing that original furniture, and there was a painting of George Washington from the early 1800s.
Right,
that was really cool.
It was the original George Washington painting. So when the original State House was burning down, somebody ran in there, pulled the picture of George Washington off the wall and ran him out of the building. So it's that old.
And then the gift shop, it was funny, there was a gift shop there which really consisted of a small cabinet, which is apparently only open a few hours each week. So that was kind of funny.
When we left the State House, then we went to Hubbard Tower.
Yes, so we drove up to Hubbard Park, which is really at a high point in Montpelier. And like you said, went to kind of walk around and check out Hubbard Tower. Probably about a 15 to 20 minute walk. That was like our one chance to walk since we were rained out in Stowe, where we were planning to do some hiking.
So you basically walk up a kind of a steep road. Somebody built this tower up there, but really it is just you climb these metal stairs inside the tower and you're up. And it would have been a great view if not for the trees. All you really saw were trees.
And then with that short bit of exercise under our belts, it was time for more sugar. So we headed down the road to the Morse Farm Maple Sugar Works.
And we got a creamy.
Yes, Maple Creamies. Maple Creamy, for those of you who don't know, are soft serve ice creams which get their flavor and color from, of course, maple syrup. And we each got a chocolate maple swirl. And then you had yours sprinkled with maple dust.
Yes, because why not?
Right? Pure maple deliciousness.
We also picked up a flight of maple syrups that went from light to dark. Also, apparently, you can bring any amount of maple syrup home, and that is okay through TSA.
Right next door to our hotel was a restaurant called Pulcinella's, where we went for some Italian food, and that was tasty. And then on our final full day in Vermont, we started out with breakfast at a local Northeast chain called The Friendly Toast.
Because I wanted a pancake or waffle breakfast where I had real Vermont maple syrup, and so Mike found that place for us, and it was delicious.
Yes, it was good. We would definitely recommend The Friendly Toast as a place for breakfast. We drove south a little bit past our hotel to the town of Shelburne to visit Shelburne Farms. And we had booked a tour there that left around 11, and they drove us all around the property to check things out. Now, there's really a great history of the farm, which was originally a homestead for a prominent family in the area there in the early 1900s. And we got to visit the home, where nowadays you can actually stay overnight.
Right, they turned it into an inn. And an inn makes it seem really quaint. This was large. It was a large home.
Yeah.
That is now a large inn.
And it's right there on the water. And then we got to go see the area where they make cheese there. They had like a little farm, got to see the grounds and the gardens right there behind the house.
And we had heard somebody say on the tour that they were going to Shelburne Museum. I'm like, okay, well, let's go there. We have no idea what it is. Oh my gosh. That is the thing you should do when you go to Burlington, is the Shelburne Museum.
Shelburne Museum was incredible. It is a can't miss. We've really never seen anything like it.
So it was funded by Electra Webb, and Electra was the daughter of the founder of Domino's Sugar. Her parents were big collectors of the Monets, Manets, Renoirs, but Electra wanted to collect Americana. And Shelburne Museum is a showcase of collections.
When you think of a museum, you think of a building, and you've kind of alluded to the fact of buildings, but it was basically a collection of 30 buildings. It is the museum. It's the entire grounds with all these buildings on it.
So there was a whole circular barn that was filled with carriages and sleighs, all things sort of horse-drawn. Then there was a giant U-shaped building that was filled with a collection of hand-carved circus acts. Like when Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey came to town, and they would go through the town, and they had, they're pulling animals in cages, or elephants are pulling animals in cages, or they had zebras. It was a huge display, and that was really interesting. And then they had an old hunting lodge that the Webbs used, and inside the lodge were like bears and moose and all kinds of taxidermy things that they hunted. The last steamship that did pleasure cruises on Lake Champlain was a ship called the Ticonderoga. It was decommissioned and it was sort of rotting in the wharf. Electra Webb decided she wanted to save it. So she and her team engineered a way to get it off of the water and into this museum, and they basically put it on railroad tracks and slowly moved it in. So in this museum is a full-size steamship that they have since renovated, and that was really cool. So there's like so many little different buildings. She would basically buy and move onto this property. There was a print shop, there was a blacksmith shop, there were just all of these buildings that she moved onto this property. In her will, on her deathbed, said that she wanted to move 6 or 8 rooms from her Park Avenue apartment into this museum, and she wanted it in this house. And then when she died, they took paneling off the walls, they took the floor up.
Yeah, and really that home was probably the most incredible thing at the museum, that they reconstructed room by room to the exact dimensions, her rooms, and that was, like you said, left in her will. She passed away in 1960, and they went ahead and built this home.
One of the other things about the stuff they moved out of her Park Avenue apartment and into this house in Vermont was that in her Park Avenue apartment, she had worked with a designer, and that guy would purchase wood paneling and infrastructure from England, from these great manor houses. As they were needing money, they'd be selling off pieces of their houses, and Electra Webb purchased all of that. So all of the wood paneling that was in this house in Vermont that was previously in her house on Park Avenue came from a manor house in England because she sourced it from there. So it was just a really interesting story of the way that she collected things. And that's where these Manets, Monets, Renoirs are just on the walls, along with a signed document from Abraham Lincoln appointing her husband, Mr. Webb, as an ambassador to Brazil.
And then after that, we wrapped up really on our final evening. We did a sunset cruise on the Spirit of Ethan Allen, which is docked there in Burlington.
So one of the things I don't think we realized until after we got off of the cruise was there was a bunch of wildfires happening in Canada. So it was very hazy on our sunset cruise, and therefore our sunset cruise pictures were not all that great because it was really hazy.
And really that was it. We flew back to Orlando, really enjoyed our time, had never been to Vermont, had never been to Montreal. I think we got a really good overview. Hopefully this was helpful to you to kind of get an overview of what there is to see and do.
So Montreal and the Botanical Gardens, the Shelburne Museum, creamies, craft beer and cider, and good food.
So that's it, and we hope you enjoyed this video and hope it helps you to plan a great trip to Vermont and Montreal.